we talked about the difference between diatonic music and chromatic music. A diatonic chord is completely in the key. Diatonic just means in the key. And chromatic means it's out of the key. It's color. It's an accidental. And one way we can modulate is by adding accidentals. Sometimes you can't analyze a chord as a pivot chord, but it still seems to function that way. It doesn't really exist in one key or the other. There's a chromatic change that makes the chord suddenly change what key it's in. Let me give you an example. I've written a progression up here where I'm moving from the key of C. I've got one chord in the key of C, and I'm going to move to a one chord in the key of G. But I'm going to do it without pivot chords because they simply don't work in this case. I've got a one chord, and then I've got my seven chord, which should bring me back to my one chord. Remember, that's the diminished chord that's supposed to bring me right back. Well, what I do instead, look at the top voice. I take my F natural, or treble clef there, and change it to an F sharp. That's just a chromatic motion. It's like a chromatic passing tone from F to F sharp to G. Because it's like a passing tone, it's very smooth. There's nothing weird about it. But look what happens here. My diminished chord becomes a minor chord. And that minor chord doesn't exist in the key of C. It's not a pivot chord or a common chord. It's a new chord. It exists actually in the key of G as a three chord. And once you hit the three chord here, then that three chord can come to a two chord, in this case a 2-7 to make the thing move smoothly. And then the seventh resolves downward, and we get a five chord, and the five goes to one, and suddenly we're in the key of G. So this is what replacing, right there is what's replacing the common or pivot chord. This chord only exists in one key, this only exists in the other key. But by doing a passing note kind of motion, we can move between the two chords effortlessly, and in doing so, we move between the two keys effortlessly. This is called chromatic modulation. It's not a big surprise. It's actually not as common as you would think. Sometimes you can actually analyze these chords. It's not that hard to do. But this is a real example of it, where I don't know how else you would analyze that, but it really works really nicely. And it takes us from a dominant of one chord to a distant of another key. I mean, this is really fascinating in its progression. Well, that's an easy lecture. We got more coming up. Bye-bye.